Well, welcome to Open Minds on Bay TV. I've got the Open Minds group here who meet regularly at the Walker Gallery to discuss anything and everything in a spirit of openness. And so we're here in the studio today. We're continuing to talk about conspiracy theories and all related to that. Now, my dad, who has passed on now, God rest his soul, he just found it really difficult to believe in the lunar landings. It used to upset him, actually, how, he couldn't believe it was true. What's your take on that?
Quite interesting that somebody at that time wouldn't believe it was true. It's been so dissed since then. Lots and lots of footage on YouTube. I think 2 different lunar sites have the same mountains in the background. There is a shot with a rock with the letter C written on it in the foreground. I don't think anyone actually ever left a plastic cup on set, but I wouldn't be surprised if that doesn't come up. My view is whether they landed on the moon or not, the pictures are fake.
Right.
You could blow it up to a big thing that maybe everybody died and that, the people who actually sort of presented to cameras never actually went. But I think that the shots were taken in a studio. So I'm not saying they didn't go, I'm just saying the pictures are incredibly suspect.
Surely by now, though, I mean, if with the level of technology that we've got to look at photographs, all right, so there's all this idea that it didn't happen.
Yeah.
So because of the photographs, surely now with technology, they'll be able to look at those photographs and show without a shadow of a doubt that they were done in a studio as opposed to being on the moon.
The photographs apparently went missing for a number of years.
But there's plenty of photographs out there, though, isn't there?
With crisscross shadows, which is a bit strange because you've got the sun, a single light source. Therefore, all the shadows should be going away from the sun and not converging.
And they didn't take any lights with them?
I don't believe they took any studio lights with them. My big thing, I was like sort of, I've got a friend who's a photographer and he looked through a few photos and he said, these are obviously fake. And that was because of his trained eye. But I started making movies for a while. And the one thing that sold it to me, I mean, I do have problems with when the lunar lander finally left the moon, there are sparks. Well, you need oxygen for sparks. But I mean, by the by, let's ignore that. Maybe there's oxygen in the fuel, which probably is, I don't know. The way there's a remote camera taking the shot. Now, this was 69, was it?
68.
68. So you've got this camera perfectly following the trajectory of this craft as it leaves the moon, which is great. You can do that. But about a third of the way up, there's a minuscule pullback. Now, I don't know if in 68 they had the technology, because you think about it, the whole lunar lander allegedly was landed on less computing power than you have in your mobile phone, considerably less. So would they then have had the technology for a remote camera to have been able to do a minuscule pullback to keep the shot in focus? I don't know.
I mean, everything that you're kind of presenting now, obviously we don't have here in the studio.
Well, have a look at it on YouTube.
Well, okay, fair enough, I will do that. But I mean, I have been to a talk given by some guy in Liverpool a few years ago about, he was saying the lunar landings didn't happen. And every little piece of evidence that he gave, it was really spurious, to be quite honest, as to whether or not that was evidence to say that the lunar landings hadn't happened. And now you're also saying, I mean, there wasn't just the one lunar landing. Yeah. There were, I don't know how many, but the whole lunar program went well into the 70s. Yeah. I think it was 72, 73, the last lunar mission. So are you saying all those are fake as well?
I don't know. I'm just talking about the iconic shots of, was it Neil Armstrong in his spacesuit, and it's absolutely pin sharp. It's just such beautiful.
Step for mankind, but
no, there is just a still of him standing there, and he just the shot is just brilliant. And they say, well, we practice and practice, but if you look at the cameras they were using, I think they were Hasselblads. I'm not sure. They're mounted to the front of their suits with very little shielding. Now they'd have been using tape. I wouldn't have thought that would have survived the lunar atmosphere. I don't know. But if you look at the ones they use now on the International Space Station, they're very, very heavily shielded. So it's just that. It's just that first one, the photos, as I say, just the shadows. What's all that about? And did this Charlie? He must have talked about them because that's the one big.
Yeah, he did. He talked quite a lot about. I mean, there's the whole kind of thing about the flag as well,
Waving,
which
yes.
seems to be waving, and obviously there's no atmosphere,
Yeah.
so there's no wind.
Yeah.
So therefore. Again, though, I just feel, and we're talking about, the problem is we're talking about visual things.
And we can't see
and
them.
we've not
Yes,
brought,
they're
you
not
know,
in
nobody's
front of
actually
us.
brought them
No.
to, you know.
I think they're iconic enough that people
But surely
know.
surely then now, with the amount of technology that we've got,
Yeah.
we can pull an image apart. We can
Yes.
look at it from so many different, you know, perspectives. We can really kind of home in. Surely, and if, like you're saying, there is a letter C
the C
on a rock, I mean, I'm not 100% sure what that's about,
Yeah.
but surely by now, we'd be able to look at this photography because it's controversial and say, yeah, look, this, and this, it doesn't pan out right. These are all fake.
What's
But
the
I think-
motive? What's the motive
Well,
for
well,
doing
That's
all this?
going to be my
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
Why would they be doing this?
Yeah.
Because, well, either we take they didn't go or they did go and the picture's messed up.
Well, okay, I'm just going to give you
Say
another
they
idea.
did go and the picture's messed up
but
and this
why?
was their big photo. What do you mean, why?
Why would they perpetuate this lie? You know, I can probably think of
Simply-
several answers myself,
Yeah.
but it's a reasonable question, isn't it?
Yeah.
To
But
challenge
then-
why
all right,
they would do
Would
this.
you
Because
say
if they
then?
ever
Would you
had-
say? Hang on. Would you say that this technology to look at photographs is in existence now?
Yes.
So which nation would have the best interest in proving that all this was a load of rubbish?
Well, right
The
now-
Russians.
Yeah, but
So why? Surely there must be somebody in Russia who's had the technology to look at these photographs in detail and say, look, and then just blow this up to the whole
And
world
that's
and
what
say,
they're threatening to do.
no one's ever done
all
it.
these
yeah, this
No
is
one's
what,
ever.
Are they threatening that
yeah,
now?
this is what I've heard recently that they are threatening to do that.
But this
and
is
it's-
50 years later.
Yeah, I've no idea why now. I've no
This
idea
is 50
why
years
now.
later,
Well,
Fiona.
They
because,
would know,
because
they
I
would
mean,
just be seen
some
as-
people would say the Cold War is
It's
heating
long
up
over.
again.
They would
or-
just see it
Maybe
as
it
sour
is,
grapes.
maybe it
After
is.
this length of time, it's just a sour grapes thing if they said that.
But the Russians haven't. The Russians haven't,
haven't yet said
and
that.
neither have the Chinese. Nobody's actually come out. I mean, unfortunately, and I'm not poo-pooing what people are saying, but again, these stories seem to kind of come out of the small voices in these conspiracy theory communities. But again, it was a war between the
Russia,
space race
yeah,
between
yeah.
the USA and Russia.
Soviet
And
Union,
surely,
also.
if these photographs have been faked,
Yeah.
you're talking about double shadows. You're talking about American flags waving
No, I
in the
wasn't
air.
talking
All
about
that
that,
type. Well,
yeah.
that's what people are talking
Yeah.
about. Surely the Russians would have homed in on that and would have examined it and looked at it and blown it all out of.
Is there not the
The
bigger
water.
theory that if they were playing a very dangerous double bluff and that if they had to say, you faked yours, they'd have to say, we faked
Well,
ours.
the Russians never went to the moon.
Yeah, but they went into the atmosphere. Maybe they didn't. Do you see? Is it that the whole space race was a big fake? Who knows? That's all I'm saying.
Why would it be a fake?
Because they're trying to bankrupt each other. This was the idea of the huge. Do you remember the huge sort of march past of tanks and things? They used to do
Yeah,
the big
yeah,
shows
yeah.
of power, and half
But
the
the Yanks
tanks were
never did-
knackered.
they didn't
No,
do
they
that.
didn't do that. They just did the space thing. They did the big razzmatazz
I
cake.
mean, it sounds like little boys' games to me.
Yes. Well, don't you think that's what it is? Don't you think that's what a lot of wars are?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you're short of money for your organisation, let's say NASA,
Yeah.
they wanted to continue getting the funding, then they would consider, they might sit in a dark room and consider making something up that raised the interest of the people so that they'd vote for the more money in the Senate or wherever it would come from. At that time, the military clearly didn't see the need to do that to promote their own
Hang on.
importance
Whoa.
in America.
Military hand in hand. They've got to be, haven't they?
Well,
You've
well,
got
were they?
Werner von Braun, who came over from Germany, who worked on the space program, along with a lot of other German scientists, and deeply involved with the military. You think of
You've got
NASA.
in a military-industrial complex, as they call it.
NASA is like the friendly face of the
Sorry,
military.
what I'm trying to say is that the Russians, with their display of strength,
Yeah.
military strength, was all about building a positive support from the people
Yeah.
for spending more.
Yes.
And they would perhaps, arguably, create their own little disturbances on their borders, and they had plenty of those. So they would continue to fund the military machine, wouldn't they? In America, they didn't need to continue to fund the military machine in the same way as the Russians did, because there was no shortage of interest in the military thing in the States. But as soon as the NASA thing started to fall apart in terms of its support, where did they turn their attention? Absolutely to the military.
Yeah.
So we now have a military budget in the States that is bigger than all the other next 15 or something put together.
Can I just say that this is like
isn't
this
that-
is a bit of a non sequitur really,
Yeah.
because what we were talking about, you know, throughout the 50s and the 60s, it was this was the space race.
Yeah.
the Cold
And this
War.
is how they kind of pinned themselves head to head,
The Cold War.
and they were gonna. It was first of all the first man in space. Well, the Russians did that,
Yeah.
and then it was the first man on the moon.
But I'm looking
And
at the motivation to lie about
but
these
what,
things.
what I'm talking about though is this race.
It stopped, didn't it?
Yeah, but
That
what,
in itself,
Yeah.
what's all that about? Why did it stop? That's bizarre.
But this still, hang on, this still
That
doesn't.
hasn't been
That,
answered.
the fact that it stopped doesn't actually discredit them actually visiting the moon.
Doesn't it?
I'm sure, again, if the Russians smelt a rat at that time
would have said.
or years later, that the Americans never, ever, ever visited the moon, that it was all done in a studio, I am sure they would have been on it like a ton of bricks. And I'm
don't
sure
think they
they've got the
would have-
technology.
Yeah.
I mean, your friend, you know, is looking at, you know, a book and some photographs and saying that looks like a fake. Surely they could do exactly the same thing.
Yes,
It's,
I'm
it's,
sure
it's
they
very interesting. We're going to cut to the commercial break now. When we come back, we're going to talk about something related. We're going to talk about alien life. And, you know, is this being hidden from us? So join us after the break when we talk about aliens and alien life. Welcome back to Open Minds. We're discussing conspiracy theories again. We've been looking at the whole issue around the lunar landings on the moon, and we're going on now to talk about alien life form. Now, you were telling me, Fiona, about a cosmonaut an Italian cosmonaut who was filmed.
It's a famous clip again on YouTube, and it's simply she's on the International Space Station. As she comes out of the space station, do her first, is it called extravehicular activity, EVA, spacewalk? She just goes, oh my God, and she's really, it's a real in breath of fear, and you hear some of the back going shh, shh, shh. And afterwards, it was explained that she'd seen sunlight flashing off the solar panels.
Right, okay.
But her voice sounded very fearful. Now, I don't know why. People are saying it's because she saw a UFO. You've also got a very recent thing where a live feed from NASA, from the International Space Station, was cut shortly after 3 specks appear to fly up from the atmosphere. You don't know what they are. So that's it.
So, I mean, have you heard these kind of stories?
Well, only this time from Fiona, the spacewalk. I mean, obviously, there's lots of other stories of people sighting, you know, seeing UFOs in the sky and stuff. I'm not too sure.
And there's the Black Knight, this satellite that's allegedly in orbit that's many thousands of years old. But I'm kind of...
Explain that. What is that?
Yeah, it's again, anyone can Google this. It's and other search engines are available. It is a very strange looking structure that appears to be orbiting the Earth, and they say it's very old.
But how do they know it's old?
Goodness knows.
When you say strange structure, are we talking a mechanical structure as opposed to
it's a
rock
big
or
sort of
something?
black, very strange shape, very irregular.
Looks kind of like
not like a
Industrial
rock,
Revolution.
very much industrial rather than you know the squared off bits and there's. But you see, I'm kind of like. There has to be life on other planets, I believe, simply because of the sheer, you know, life will always find a way. And I just believe there are so many Earth-like planets in the Goldilocks zone, in exactly the right bit, orbiting suns, you know, where life certainly could have evolved.
What's the Goldilocks zone?
The Goldilocks zone is neither too hot nor too cold, just right for organic life to exist. And we're pushing the envelope now where organic life can exist because they've found microbes existing in nuclear reactors. They found all sorts of things under the ice in the North and
and
South
like
Pole.
kind of seabed,
So,
right,
so we have this idea that, you know, we live in a very comfortable little sort of planet, but it has extremes, and within those extremes, bacteria can still exist. I do believe that you know, there is life on other planets. Whether they would visit us, though, because we are just absolutely such a backwater in our own galaxy. We're far out on one of these spiral arms. I'm not entirely sure we're where the main traffic thing would be.
If they have the technology, though, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, we're talking. I mean, our nearest star
Alpha
is
Centauri.
yeah.
Is
So
just-
you're talking 1 light year. So that
Yeah,
takes
1
light
quarter.
traveling at
Yeah.
the speed that it does. It'll
Yeah.
take it 1 year to
Yeah.
get here. So any kind of technology that's
Yeah.
able to reach us, you know, will be really, really advanced, and possibly has been traveling.
And there's
quite some.
also Stephen Hawking's idea that you keep your head down. You don't broadcast the fact that you're here, but unfortunately, every broadcast, including this, including what we're saying now, guys, think about it, it's going to be going out into the space around
So
us.
we could be being watched by aliens now.
Of course we are.
Yeah,
But in
yeah.
many thousands
you think
of
we
years,
are,
we
Ed?
could be watched.
I think the establishment are watching us, to be honest.
I'd be surprised if they
Yeah,
weren't.
I think they're all watching us carefully, and of course, anyone who sounds like they're talking a lot of sense may well be influenced us after we leave the studio, bribed, blackmailed, whatever
Yeah.
you want to call
Get
it,
too much
discredited.
back into that, but you know, what's your view? What's your view on aliens?
Well, let me give a controversial view of aliens. But first of all, let me say that I agree with Fiona that there's, if this universe is real, then this universe is vast enough to contain enough sentient life, let me call it that rather than carbon-based life, but sentient life to actually manifest in some form or answer some of the manifestations we've seen or have experienced on this planet in all these years. So some of these things will be true that have been reported, but they may not necessarily have to be the Goldilocks zone, because why should all sentient life in the universe be like us?
Carbon-based,
Yeah.
yeah.
Why
it could
should
be
it be like us?
silicon-based, yeah.
Why could it not just be spiritual based?
Right.
It doesn't have to be physical.
What does that mean?
Energy, simple energy, pure energy. So why can't aliens that we talk about be all these different forms, but where we have energy that makes us up, but it's energy which takes a physical form in our case, carbon-based energy. Why not just energy that is invisible, transparent, able to move across the space and time without having to breathe, without having to sustain itself with food? Why couldn't it just know what all the warp things are and the black holes, or no, not the black holes, you know, the wormholes, where all those things are, and just use them like roots?
Or maybe, I mean, I'm just thinking, there are some theories that, you know, kind of, when people have sighted aliens or people have woke up and seen, you know, kind of a grey at the end of the bed and big eyes and big head and everything. But we've had creatures with us for, you know, kind of centuries and centuries and centuries.
That's what my book's about.
Yeah,
goblins. We used to call them fairies.
Goblins,
Tales,
sprites, fairies. And all that's happened is, as we have
Yeah.
developed and we have become space age farers, our little people have actually changed as well.
Yeah.
So they're not extraterrestrials. Possibly
they're natives.
they've always been with us.
So
a different view of
That
this.
is exactly
If
the
that's true-
premise of my book.
If that's true, where are they living? And,
Well, if they're interdimensional,
right, okay, I've got
yeah, they don't
Yeah.
need to, do they? And this whole idea that fairies just pop up when
So
you
how does
least
this
expect
relate to, and obviously speaking as a clergy person, to the sort of biblical accounts of angels and demons and the Nephilim?
energy beings? Doesn't this sound like the same thing? What about that, you know, the fiery wheel of Elijah and all this? You know, people have said that surely that was a UFO.
Now, so, of course, some people say, and I've heard it said that, you know, that when we look at Stonehenge and the kind of the ancient monuments, these were the sites of some kind of worship or veneration. Now, some people say that as we've developed as human beings and have become more materialistic in terms of the material universe, we've become we've desensitized ourselves in terms of being able to actually perceive of these things.
No, I think we're more sensitive. I think that the way I explain it, everyone's heard of feminine intuition. I believe it resides. I think everyone's got it. I think
feminine intuition.
no. I think
Sorry.
everyone's got intuitive powers.
Okay.
How often in the old days, before you had your mobile, the phone would be ringing. You knew who it was as you went to pick it up when you didn't have any caller ID.
Right. Okay.
The other thing is occasionally you might have a sudden inspiration to look again in the wing mirror when you've already checked it's clear, and sure enough, there's a car there.
A deja vu?
Yeah, well, not quite. A lot of us know when somebody behind us is looking at us. A lot of people have that thing, and you can turn, and a lot of people have that thing. They meet someone, they don't like them, they're not sure why, but later on they'll find out, yeah, that's why we didn't get on.
That's interesting, because I've got a very close friend who lives in the other part of the country, and now when we ring each other, which is not that regular actually, invariably the other person will say, I was just thinking about getting in touch with you.
Yeah,
you're talking about the same thing.
Same thing, and I believe that was bred in. Because when we first, the proto-hominids, when we first came down from the trees, we were McDonald's on legs. We've got a big, juicy, calorific-laden brain. We don't have any of the things that other creatures have to survive. We don't run very fast. We don't camouflage. We don't squirt ink. We don't taste poisonous. It tastes brilliant. We don't have claws and teeth, not big ones. All we've got is our brain. So I think it makes sense that we actually, the ones who stood there and went, I'm not going to go home by that rock today because, it just feels a bit funny. The ones who trusted their intuition lived to breed, and I think it was bred in.
So it was a survival mechanism?
I think so, yeah. And I think that what we're doing now, we develop it, and that's why you get some people who can do mediumship and some people can do automatic writing, whatever.
So there's a programme on, I think it was a film called The Spirit Molecule, which is about a substance that we produce naturally called DMT, dimethyltryptamine. But people have been known, I think there was an experiment in America where people were injected with larger amounts of this DMT. And strangely enough, a lot of the people reported meeting different entities, beings, lizard-type entities.
So back to David Icke now.
But what I'm saying is as well, I wonder whether or not, especially when we're talking about fairies and sprites and angels, whether or not there was, perhaps a larger production of this within ourselves, this DMT, or whether or not people were consuming it. I mean, people have heard of things like magic mushrooms. Maybe people were consuming these things accidentally as part of their diet, which gave rise to kind of either hallucinations or a heightened perception.
Well, that's the thing that started the big werewolf scares and the vampire scares in Europe, because you had the very, very heavy winters, very wet winters in the Middle Ages, and that led to ergot fungus growing on the wheat.
That's right.
And you get this through the bread, you get this pinky sort of stain, and that was natural acid. So you had all the peasants
By
eating
acid, you mean LSD?
LSD. So you had all these sort of peasants suddenly having vision in the Middle Ages, all through Europe, and they were all tripping. They were all seeing werewolves, vampires.
And of course, people do use, those substances today to kind of improve their perception.
Are you saying they're not there?
Okay, we're coming to another commercial break. When we come back, we're going to continue on the alien theme, maybe pick up on some of this stuff. We're going to talk about Area 51 in Arizona desert, so join us after the break. Welcome back to Open Minds. We're discussing conspiracy theories, we're talking about lunar landings, aliens. Area 51, it's in the Arizona desert. What's got, there's countless programs on Freeview.
Yeah, Roswell. Yeah, I'm very sceptical about that. I really am. I think that's another. Theory. Yeah, I'm really not sure. I just feel that it's so publicly keep out. It's almost like somebody going down the street with a megaphone going, "Don't talk to me, stay away." Yeah. It's kind of like, look here.
So it's a bit like the Bilderberg group.
Yeah, I feel
it's a distraction.
There's lots of alleged places where UFOs have crashed. There's Rendlesham Forest. That was a very interesting
case.
Where's that? That's in Suffolk.
Right, okay.
And one fairly close to us now is the Berwyn Mountains in North Wales, where there was a huge crash in the 70s, and police actually sort of went door to door. A lady had a camera confiscated, and people still in that area talk about it. Yes, they do. I was recently involved with some programmes with BBC Wales, and that was one of the ones they covered, although I wasn't on that particular show. And people went up looking for evidence, couldn't find anything, but there was definitely something very strange happened that night. There was a huge crunching thud in the mountain.
I think this whole business of police knocking on doors may well be true, but don't the police say something? I mean, these are just ordinary policemen.
You'd have thought, wouldn't you?
Or are they special branch people who are aliens themselves? Or who are these people who were sent out to stop ordinary people from saying something that they saw?
And also,
because they're not saying.
Which comes first? I mean, are we talking there is an area that has been cornered off, keep out, so therefore people speculate and say, oh, I bet that's because there's an alien ship crash there. Because if you look at, say, Chernobyl today, I'm sure there's a whole area around Chernobyl, keep out. But of course, we all know what went on in Chernobyl and the reason why you have to keep out. I mean, it could be something really, really simple, that there has been maybe a nuclear test or something, a nuclear weapon, and that area now is highly radioactive, so you have to keep out.
That sounds
but we've
more
just
like it,
we've
doesn't
just
it?
speculated because the government haven't said why you have to keep out.
Hollywood
So
said it was interesting.
But I mean, Area 51, what are the American government saying is going on there?
Well, they're saying nothing.
They're not saying
nothing.
They're
so
saying
we're filling in the gaps, aren't
So
we?
why can't you go there?
Yeah, exactly. The word, right, as far as I understand the facts are there was some kind of a crash there on a ranch. It was disputed. The government said it was a weather balloon that had come down. The original witness, or who saw the wreckage afterwards, said it was nothing like a weather balloon. I know what a weather balloon looks like. And as far as he was concerned, it was just some kind of a craft that had crashed. Very interestingly, if you look at this whole idea of flying saucers, again, haven't they changed through the ages? Don't they look sleeker and nicer now than they used to? Weren't they very sort of, 1950s
Well, now
spinning
they're black
top at
cubes
the time?
coming through wormholes in the sky. And, we've modified the whole thing
So
in
they kind of
accordance with
mirrored
our
science fiction.
Yeah.
It's Hollywood, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, Independence Day.
Yeah.
They're doing another one, aren't they?
Are they?
They're doing a sequel, I think. But Independence Day is yet another one that fills us all with this notion of aliens being like that.
Yeah.
And that they fly these shaped things, and they're all out to get us.
Yeah.
Well,
as I say, go back to Stephen Hawking. He did say keep your head down because, unfortunately, particularly on this planet, if we're talking about a fleshy life form that has to strap itself into a steel can to stay alive in space, then, and it's going to come, it's got superior technology to us. You look what we did to the American Indians. You look what we did to the Aborigines in Australia. Anyone who goes somewhere and colonises, generally, it's not a very nice outcome for the people already there. So I think
So
that
Hawking is saying,
Hawking is
don't
saying,
invite these people in.
Yeah, that's it. Keep quiet.
Well, they're not people,
Yeah,
are they? Well, they're going
whatever.
to these beings in.
Close down CERN. Not CERN, SETI.
Do you think he genuinely believes that, or he's just...
Well, he's saying it.
He's winding us up.
He's winding us up. Because he has got a sense of humour.
He
Good
has
sense
got
of
a
humour.
great
indeed, yeah.
sense of humour,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
I
Okay,
suppose he's talking about a possible outcome, though, isn't he?
He is.
But he's treating these aliens, he's giving them the same kind of personalities and behaviours that we've had in the past.
Yeah.
Okay, so if there are alien life forms, if there's other planets that are developed, and these life forms are travelling around, and they are watching us, why would our governments not want us to know about it?
Well, there is a theory. Again, I don't necessarily agree with it, but they're supposed to be telling our government how to govern us. This is one of the theories. I really don't subscribe to it.
So our governments, these people we can't see that we talked about in the previous programme.
Yeah. Oh, no.
The people we can't
that's
see
different.
are now talking to aliens.
That's it. That's another theory.
That's another theory.
That's another theory.
Yeah. What do you think?
saying
Ed?
they're already
You're the
I'm not
rationalist
even
here.
sure that they are really aliens, and
Yeah.
I think they could well be time travelers of humans in the future.
Yeah.
They just take a different form sometimes, or they may look different to the people who they present themselves to, deliberately or by accident. They suddenly appear, and you get this close encounter with a person, a descendant of your own from 20 centuries from now, who just happens to be travelling around in time. we lock ourselves into this belief that time is important in the universe. And I think all these things depend on that being true. So if we remove time as being a factor that governs the way physics works in the universe, if we remove that as a factor, then anything is possible, isn't it?
What you do, you're not removing time, you're removing our perception
of time.
Because we have it linear,
we do,
beginning, middle, end, right?
Yeah.
What if it's a series of concentric circles?
Absolutely.
And what if everything's happening at the same time? You get
Yeah.
bleed through, you just don't know.
So you just change the structure of the database,
Well, it's
time is a
interesting because I've met people myself actually who've seen ghosts, as it were, and often there's stories of people seeing Roman armies walking through buildings and walls, and I thought to myself, well, is this? I've used the term time periods colliding.
Yeah.
Is that?
Well,
There's something in Bold Street.
There's
lots of sightings like that in Bold Street here.
There's several theories about that. It's like the stone tapes. It's certain buildings do pick up. You think of an old-fashioned sort of tape and a tape cassette. It's iron and something else, and certain rocks have those minerals in them in the right quantities where they can literally soak up an event and almost broadcast it back to you. There's the idea that there's the kind of ghosts you're supposed to see are the ones that they're the lady who walks through the wall where the door used to be, or the Roman soldiers who walk along. There's a famous one about a legion walking down the Fosse Way, and you can only see them from the knees up because the road level's gone up. So they seem to be just some kind of a tape repeating, a piece of film repeating. There's the theory that you get the rare ones who actually interact with us, and that's really strange, and that's really weird. People who will talk to you from another time period. I don't know. I really don't know what's going on there. I think these anomalies every so often are really interesting, but I wouldn't, again, say I necessarily believe in ghosts.
I mean, the issue with this, for me, in terms of things being covered up, is that, it sounds plausible to me, and my question is, why is this not being discussed in serious? Why is it not being discussed in serious academic circles? It seems to be, on low budget TV.
Yeah.
If you want to find out about this stuff, it's being discussed by kind of quite eccentric people on low budget TV. It doesn't seem to be.
Is that because people, of academic note wouldn't want to be kind of seen to be kind of having this kind of conversation?
Well, it seems really. If there is plausibility,
Right.
and
Can I bring this back to occult though, and the military, right? This whole idea that spying and magic are combined is very, very interesting. Latter day, we've had these books, Men Who Stare at Goats. There's another one called Psychic Warrior, which I'll tell you about in a moment. But this goes back at least the time of Dr. John Dee, who was Queen Elizabeth I spy master. And he mixed magic and spying as a complete routine thing. He had this obsidian scrying bowl where he allegedly could remotely view what other people were doing. Now you had the CIA work on remote viewers. The military have put a lot of money into this, which they wouldn't do if it didn't work. Back to John Dee, his code name was 007. And
really?
Yeah, this is where it was taken from. And the O's represented eyes, and he used to say, "For your eyes only," on notes to Queen Elizabeth I. Along came Ian Fleming, who was in military intelligence. He was a naval intelligence officer. And he wrote the James Bond novels, which are full of occult. So Le Chiffre is supposed to be Aleister Crowley. But more interestingly, in the last war, when Hess came over from Germany, when they were winning. There's no two ways about it. The Germans were winning the war. Hess came to Scotland to parley for peace. And the military were just astonished. And they said, why are you doing this? And he said, well, we've been to every single fortune teller we can find. There's no way we can win the war. We're not going to win. It's going to be a disaster.
The Nazis were occultists,
yes, of course.
Yeah.
And the Fleming was there, and the first thing he said is, this guy's talking high magic. He needs to be debriefed by someone like Aleister Crowley, who will know what he's talking about. So if you start bringing this in, that is like seriously weird.
But you could argue that if you fill yourself with a strong belief that you're not going to win, you're not going to win. And there are many events I can think of where people have talked themselves or believed themselves into the thing. It's self-fulfilling prophecy.
Conversely, Churchill believed he was going to win.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
But
And
Churchill
therefore, the
was-
people
yeah,
of Britain
yeah.
believed they were going to win as well.
Yeah.
And you know, if you're fighting someone, you're playing against someone who believes they're going to lose because they've seen some of the fates work against them
Yeah.
during the process.
Yeah, but hang on, they were
It's-
really doing well at the time. 40-41, they were absolutely top of the game.
All they need to see is something go wrong that they believe, and you say maybe it's,
Yeah.
it's an occultist thing, it's a magic belief.
Yeah.
But if they
The story of
believe in
Macbeth, isn't
something,
it, really?
Yeah.
yeah, if they believe that something's going wrong, can I do a football analogy? Right, the 2005 Istanbul thing, Liverpool against AC Milan.
Yeah. Quickly.
Losing 3-0, they go out to win. They're 3-3 with a couple of minutes left, and the main striker completely misses an absolute sitter with 2 goes at it, and it shouldn't have happened. He stood to the side, and he looked like he'd lost belief, like he looked up to heaven, and he was saying, I don't believe we can win this, it's against
And
us.
did they win?
No, they lost. Well, AC Milan lost.
We haven't got
yeah.
any time left. No
And
minutes
all I'm
at
saying is that-
So we're going to our
Yeah.
commercial break. We'll come back and talk some more about this.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Welcome back to Open Minds. We're discussing all things conspiracy, and we cannot leave these 2 episodes without talking about 9/11 and the whole controversy surrounding that. No, we've got 11 minutes or so. Let's
Not long enough.
not long enough, but
No.
tell us some. People just don't believe this was
Well, there's
as it was.
a famous film on
reported.
the internet called Loose Change, which I urge everyone to go and have a look at. There's also footage of various buildings of the same construction, including one in Kuala Lumpur, where the top floors were on fire and it burnt for 11 days without falling down. There's this group I mentioned briefly before, Engineers and Architects of America, or it might be Architects and Engineers, and they just simply say that the buildings were felled so neatly, a better job than Fred Dibner could do. And after all that carnage, it just so happens that one of the hijackers' paper passports flutters down gently and is found on a sidewalk. If
All
you put that
complete.
in a movie, I'm sorry, the
They wouldn't
audience,
believe
they
you.
wouldn't believe you. And this is one of the best things for conspiracy theories. You think to yourself, if that was in a movie, would we think that's sloppy writing? But you want to talk about Building 7, don't you, which is fascinating.
I think, we talk a lot about, in the mainstream, you've got the Twin Towers is what people kind of refer to all the time. And in the background, there was always Building 7 to the people in the know. It's become more in the foreground because of YouTube and Facebook and things. But Building 7 is a fascinating paradox in a way, because Building 7 went down after the other 2 buildings. And when you look at the film footage of Building 7 going, you can see explosions in the floors, and you can see it go down in the middle and then fall into its own footprint because of a fire in a few rooms on one of the floors. That wouldn't happen. It has to have been blown. And to ask yourself, why would they do that? Why would they lie about Building 7?
I mean, could it be that they realised that these buildings were going to burn for X number of days, and they decided to take?
But they would have said that. They would have admitted that's why they did it. But
with
there's a
living
lot of,
people inside, you blow
Well, they're
them
gonna-
up
yeah,
with
they're
they
gonna
living
die
took everybody
anyway,
out.
Oh, that's
But
nice.
Look
give them a chance.
at the factual evidence that we've got, where we can speak for what people have said at the time, that you then add together, and okay, so you create a truth that you may want to have as the truth, that there's some conspiracy going on. But let me just present some of the facts that we hear from different things. First of all, no one has said that a building of that kind could fall in that way, like free fall, into its own footprint, unless it was helped. The man who owned the insurance on the building said to the press just before it went that they decided to pull the building. He didn't say pull the building. We've decided to pull. Now, to demolition experts, the word pull is to take the building down. When he was asked later, he said, "Oh, to pull the police and people out of the area." Okay, you believe it if you want to, but there was a film footage on the BBC. I think the BBC were reporting what was going on. In the background, there was Building 7 visible, and they're talking about Building 7 has just gone, and it was still in picture.
There was lots of molten metal running out of it as well. Apparently.
Yeah, there was a lot of strange things.
Yeah.
But the most fascinating thing to me is, why would they do that? And there's a great motivation, conspiracy theory. You know, this is not me saying that I necessarily believe or don't believe these things, but we're talking about conspiracy theory. The conspiracy theory is that they pulled the building deliberately because, in fact, that was why they did the whole thing. Because Building 7 contained lots of corporate evidence that was being used for big scandal, major multi-trillion scandals, like, was it Exxon? There were a number of companies being investigated
at the time,
and the files were in that building.
Seems a bit absurd.
It just seems,
why not just destroy that building?
Because people are just resources. Doesn't matter about.
But why not?
So are you saying that
they were
they destroyed the Twin Towers
in order
to
they
destroy?
No, I'm not. This is not Ed saying all of these things are true. I'm saying the conspiracy theory is that they were going after Building 7.
That sounds like an add-on to stop people thinking there's a conspiracy about the Twin Towers. That's muddying the water even more.
What I think is it's like this with so many conspiracy theories. Something so big that's brought down by something so small, be that the Twin Towers, be that JFK, be that Princess Diana, something small and ordinary, or a small group of people who just happen to fly some planes into some towers and they fall down, can't possibly be what it is. There's got to be a backstory. There's got to be a conspiracy theory behind it all.
But the Building 7 is a story in its own right, and so we have to explain why Building 7 went the way it did.
This has never happened before. You know, we're talking about an event that's never, even though you talk about the building in Kuala Lumpur, the same, there was a building in Spain as well. But that wasn't a building that had a Boeing, whatever it was, flown into it with how much, fuel in it. These things had never happened before. So maybe if this was an event that was happening.
Thing and look at it putting the bits together. Look at the Pentagon. Look at the circular hole blasted through the building allegedly by an airline, and then look at the holes left when the aircraft hit the Twin Towers. They're a big slash shape to allow for the wings. So how on earth was that circular hole?
The Pentagon was made of a lot sturdier material.
So what happened to you reckon the wings knocked out on the outside?
Well, it could have gone in. The fuselage could have gone through, and the wings snapped off.
Much smaller than the size of an aircraft
we're in the technicalities now, which is interesting. But I want to get behind. If why?
Cui bono? Who benefits?
Yeah, who benefits?
Well, it led to an oil war, didn't it? It led to an oil war on a country that had absolutely nothing to do with bin Laden. And this is the whole point of Michael Moore's documentary, Fahrenheit 9/11. It led to the Iraq War. And the point is, you have a lot of American citizens who to this day believe there is a direct link between 9/11 and the Iraq War. And we went and we got them and we showed them. Well, I'm sorry, wrong country. And if, again, you watch Michael Moore's fascinating documentary, which is heartrending, there's a poor Iraqi woman, she's going, why are they doing this to us? Why? You were ruled by a dictator. Well, excuse me, what about Pol Pot? We didn't go after him. There's no oil in Cambodia. There's no oil in Cambodia. That's why he was never cleaned out of there. So to do the moral thing and to say, hey, let's get rid of
look what they did to us.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Look what they did to us. We'll get them back.
Yeah. And it was the wrong country. But
they went into Iraq on, kind of the weapons of mass destruction. He was a known war criminal. When they got Saddam Hussein, he was hung for war crimes. So why go through this whole massive rigmarole of faking planes flying into some buildings just so that you can have the license to go into, say, Iraq, and
Hearts and minds. Hearts and minds.
I was
They
just
wanted
gonna
the
say,
American people behind them.
It's
I
the
think.
periodic
Do you believe
persuasion
this?
of the people
I
to
think so,
support
yeah.
the
I do
military
believe that.
actions.
Yeah.
I think the military power is a major employer of
Yeah.
people and of power to those people. And if you lose the will of the people to support fighting
Yeah.
people around the world, you've got enough problems at home without spending all this money abroad. If you lose the will of the people to support that, then there's a major reaction to that. Industry could completely collapse if the defence...
Well, nobody's ever said,
Why
why
not?
did we go to Afghanistan?
well, why not just plant bombs?
We
Why not just
knew
plant
we were
bombs
on
in
for a
these
hiding
buildings?
there.
We went there to get Bin Laden and Al Qaeda, who were holed up in the
Yeah.
Tora Bora Mountains.
And then
Yeah.
allegedly after he was killed, and that's another thing.
That's another program.
That's
we
another
stayed
story.
there. We stayed there for a lot longer than we needed to. It was one of these. At one time, the Mujahideen were on our side.
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
it's crazy. We went there sort of, in Victoria's time, and basically got kicked out. The Russians went over and got a kicking. We went back and got another kicking. It should be said that Afghanistan, you can't win in that kind of, against, you're sending ordinary guys who are just doing a job against guys who really, it's a needle match, it's their home. They really are going to fight for that a lot harder.
I'm going to have to bring this to an end now because we're coming to the end of our programme, which has been fascinating. So thanks to Fiona and Ed and Marc for coming on from the Open Minds group, of which I'm part of as well. We want to do more programmes like this and we want to invite guests on. So if you want to get in touch with us about ideas, or if you want to come on the programme, why not email us at openminds@baytvliverpool.com. That's openminds@baytvliverpool.com. Thanks for watching. See you next time.